Welcome to another edition of the Wrap-Up Show with John Schaefer and Jim Russell. Remember, subscribe to our content. If you're looking for year-round Padres content, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell as well. You'll be notified when we have new episodes. Of course, like these videos and follow us on Twitter at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. The breaking news, Jim, as we now know, Jayce Tingler has been fired. We were expecting it. The question becomes now what? In terms of AJ Preller, what pressure does he face? And where does the organization turn with their next manager?
I don't know. And everything now points at AJ Preller. You know, listening to AJ talk today, and he talked for about 30 minutes, you could have cut and pasted the exact same press conference after he fired Buddy Black and after he fired Andy Green and just played it today. It was the same exact message. Oh, well, you know, we need to get guys in here to get on the same page, and the coaching staff didn't execute the vision, and, you know, we weren't all pointing in the right direction. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. Yet he continues to be in a position of power where he gets to hire yet another manager who knows what that manager is going to be? Who knows if it's going to be another first-time guy? Who knows if it's going to be a guy with experience? But to say that you trust AJ Preller or that you think he deserves another chance to make another hire, I don't know how you can do it. I think, personally, this is what I think. Seidler should have wiped everybody out. Like Tingler, he's the fall guy. He's the scapegoat for AJ Preller's misfortunes and AJ Preller's horrible decision makings and AJ Preller's hirings and signings and trades. It fell on Jayce Tingler's face. It was all his fault, right? But none of the fault's on AJ Preller. No. This is AJ Preller's baby. AJ Preller made this thing. He made it all. This all falls on him. I don't see how he still has a job today. Personally, I'm getting rid of Preller like yesterday. He is the problem here. He is the guy that's pulling the strings and making the decisions. If you look at the firing today of Jayce Tingler, that is another admission that, guess what? I messed up again. I effed up again. Well, how many more times can Preller continually say, I made a mistake and I effed up? Like, how many more times can you do that?
One more. I mean,
we get one more chance. One more chance.
Well, the pressure's ratcheted up. I mean, I think that, honestly, we knew he was getting one more chance. I mean, to come on and say, oh, my gosh, I can't believe AJ Preller stole his job. We knew he had his job. I mean, he's been making decisions these last couple of weeks. He's under contract through 2026. There was no indication in that Athletic article that he was losing his job. You might not like what he's done since 2015, but there was no indication from Peter Seidler that he was losing his job. And then Peter Seidler has spoken this afternoon to the AP and Bernie Wilson. Bernie Wilson had this on Twitter with Peter Seidler saying this. I knew he'd say this. I don't like that he says it because I don't think he's accountable right now. But he says the failure starts with me. I'm going to look in the mirror and have an honest analysis of what went wrong and what needs to be changed. He said that AJ Preller's job is, quote unquote, 100% safe. Now, he went on to say, Seidler says he and Preller need to make sure what happened in the second half of the season ultimately is viewed as an aberration because we're a World Series caliber competitive team going forward for the next several years. That's certainly the standard we hold ourselves to. I think he's now saying that, listen, this next hire once again is yours, but if this does not go to plan in 2022, not only is the seat hot, we might have to change direction. If you are a World Series caliber team, there's no 79 and 83 in 2022. There's no missing the postseason. Shoot, there might not be getting into the postseason as like a 5 or 6 seed. We'll see what the playoffs look like next year, and losing in the first round. So the expectations have gone up, I think, for 2022. And the problem is you're still in the division with Andrew Friedman and Farhan Zaidi. That hasn't changed. That's problematic, in my opinion, for an AJ Preller. With that being said, I didn't think AJ Preller was getting fired today. Now, I think he's going to take a lot of the blame today. This was never only on Jayce Tingler. We've said that. So all of a sudden, the attention turns to AJ Preller, who's got, by the way, a bad track record hiring managers.
AJ Preller has done nothing as a GM for this franchise. And I'm talking about wins and losses. Yeah, he brought in Tatis. Yeah, he brought in Machado. You know, yeah, he brought in some nice pieces. But other than that, he has done nothing as a general manager where you can look at and say, you know what, that guy deserves another year. And yes, you're right. We all knew he wasn't going to get fired. That's the case. But I'm telling you that he should not be here as the general manager. He should not be in a position of power, but yet he remains. And the whole thing with, firing Tingler today, I thought I would be more like, okay, yeah, it's the right move. Like, and I thought my position would be firmly on, yes, it's the right move. They need to hire, guy with an experience and whatnot. But the more I look at it, and then hearing Preller talk about what happened this year and what they need going forward, it's like, dude, you hired Jayce Tingler because you needed to fix the exact same problems that you're having now. Like, that's why you hired your buddy, is to fix the problems that you had with Andy Green, which was communication, getting everybody to buy in, everybody on the same page, the coaching staff and the manager, executing your vision as the GM of this team. Yet again, you are having the same problems. It's deja vu all over again with what happened with Andy Green and Tingler. It's the same thing. So I personally have no faith anymore in AJ Preller to make the right move. Whatever he does, whatever happens with AJ Preller, like, I do not have any faith in him to make the right decision, to hire the right coaching staff, to bring in the right players, to make the right trades. And maybe he can prove me and everyone else wrong. That's fine. I would love him to do that. But guess what? It's been 7 years, and so far, he has done nothing. He has done nothing as a general manager for this team besides have 6 losing seasons in 7 years. And oh, by the way, the only winning season that you had was in a fake 60-game year.
Okay, hold on. A couple of things. I mean, Jayce Tingler hire was a bad one. Just because, Jayce Tingler's taking the fall and might be scapegoated and had communication issues with the front office, like Andy Green had communications issue with the front office, whoever that lies on. Jayce Tingler was hired to be fired. It was a bad hire. AJ Preller bears the brunt of that responsibility.
Jayce Tingler?
You don't think Jayce Tingler was a bad hire? If you're trying to win a World Series with a first-time manager that had never managed anywhere, Jayce Tingler was a good hire. You had Ron Washington and Jayce Tingler.
Okay.
Those are your two choices, and Jayce Tingler was the better hire. That's comical.
You're right.
2 years ago. Yeah.
But here's the thing. Andy Green was hired to be fired. That hire was not somebody that they envisioned to be here when they contend. The Jayce Tingler hire was 100% because they thought they were going to contend. No way did I think that
he didn't have the track record.
I know he didn't, John, but you can't tell me that AJ Preller, when he hired Jayce Tingler, was thinking to himself, yeah, I'm hiring this guy to get fired. Like, I know that happens in every job, but the thing
he wasn't. But that's the problem. Everyone else thought that. When Jayce Tingler was hired, everyone thought, if the expectations are to win the World Series, you've hired the wrong manager. He should have been your 2016 manager.
Right, but that's not AJ Preller thought. That's not what AJ Preller thought.
No, well, that's the problem. I mean, that inherently is the problem. AJ Preller had this option in 2020. Ron Washington, 2-time World Series manager, getting into a World Series and losing it. His whole career as a player or a coach or a manager, had a team within a strike of winning the World Series, got that team back to a World Series. He had that man in a room, and he had Jayce Tingler, and he chose Jayce Tingler. That's all you need to know about AJ Preller's ability to hire a manager. Now, could he fall into this thing? Could he hire Ron Washington second time around? I have no idea. Is Ron Washington going to be interested? I have absolutely no idea. He should be considered at least a front runner. Is Bruce Bochy going to all of a sudden be interested? And could he luck out? Is that a possibility? I have no idea. But the idea that you were going to win a World Series with Jayce Tingler, with a manager that had never spent a second in a big league dugout in that capacity, doesn't know anything about National League Baseball, was exposed this year in the second half of the season. In my opinion, Jayce Tingler bears some of the responsibility as well. He wasn't a capable manager when it comes to, he was outsmarted. I mean, look at what happened against the Giants and the Dodgers this year. This is not a World Series caliber manager right now. He is not the one that's most accountable for what's happening. That's AJ Preller. But I mean, the idea that Jayce Tingler was going to come in and win 2 World Series for you in the next 7 years, I mean, that's laughable. And it was laughable 2 years ago.
Yeah, everybody thought that. But the only person that mattered was AJ Preller. He thought that this guy, and he even told Marty a month and a half ago, he thought that this guy was going to be here for over a decade. And they had full faith in him to execute out the vision of the front office. And I ask you this, if it didn't work and it couldn't work with AJ Preller's hand-picked guy, a guy that he was friends with, a guy that he stuck his neck out for to hire, because we all know that ownership wanted a guy with experience like Ron Washington, or I don't think even Bochy was available yet, but a guy like that. If it didn't work with Jayce Tingler, his guy, his buddy, his friend, how is it going to work with anybody else he hires? Like, tell me that. Because if it can't work with Tingler and Preller, how is it going to work with anybody else?
I think it starts with buy-in. We saw Jeff Passan today saying on ESPN, like, listen, it was so toxic. He essentially said it was absurdly toxic. He heard that from a player in the Padres clubhouse. They didn't even want to be there. He said late in the season. The buy-in was never going to happen with a Jayce Tingler, who was an extension of AJ Preller. When the Padres players didn't get what they wanted at the deadline, they took it out on Tingler. That's really neither here nor there. You bring in Ron Washington, that conversation's over. Ron Washington's he's been on the highs and the lows. He's going to be able to get guys pointed in the right direction. Bruce Bochy, conversation's over. Those managers earn your respect the second they walk in the door. Unfortunately, Jayce Tingler was never that guy. He didn't have either of the two things you need, either a lengthy playing career or a lengthy managerial career. He had neither of those. Therefore, he didn't have the credibility of guys like Eric Hosmer, Will Myers, Manny Machado, Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, in my opinion, in that clubhouse. And it showed in the second half of the season. So I think you can get this thing pointed right with a right hire. I'm not saying it solves everything. Do I think the Padres win 107 games next year and pass the Giants and the Dodgers? I personally don't, but I do think they should be a lot better than 79-83. And I think making the right managerial hire is only going to help in that quest.
So you mentioned what Jeff Passan said on ESPN today, where, you know, players were telling him that guys don't want to be here. Okay, that's fine. Who brought the players in? AJ Preller. He brought in these guys that just don't want to be here. So it all goes back to AJ Preller. He brings in these players who have quit on two managers now, who have said they don't want to be here two times. I'm sure a lot of players in 2019 were like, dude, I don't want to be here. And then you've created a toxic work environment that's all on you, AJ. It's all on you. You have created this mess. You have made this mess, and you have to lay in it for everything that has happened with this franchise, good and bad. It all goes back to AJ Preller. And right now, the mess that is created from hiring a first-time manager to bringing in players that quit, to bringing in guys like Eric Hosmer on massive contracts where they don't perform, to hiring and firing, oh, by the way, 30 coaches in your tenure as general manager now, if he doesn't retain any coaches from the former staff with Jayce Tingler. You have fired 30 coaches in 7 years. That tells me, and we already knew this is not a coach's problem, AJ. This is a you problem, okay? This is a you problem because you are bringing in these guys that continually fail you and they don't execute your plan. Well, maybe it's your plan that's the problem. Maybe that the coaches that you bring in are looking at the plan that you give them and saying to themselves, what? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And they are saying to you, AJ, this is not going to work. So, of course, they're going to go and try to execute what they think is going to work because whatever AJ's telling them to do, like, that's not working. So maybe it's your plan, AJ, that these coaches don't want to execute because 30 coaches that you have fired in 7 years, that is a massive indictment on you as a general manager and you as a leader and you going far as, you know, hiring process goes. Like, you are not good at your job and you have a problem. And if you don't fix this thing in 3 months for 2022, how can you bring him back after next year? Because I don't know how this thing can succeed with AJ Preller at the helm. I really don't.
All right, that's the question. Is AJ Preller owed anything beyond 2022? Reply in the comment section. Is AJ Preller owed anything beyond 2022? Much more on this story coming up this week. Who should the Padres look towards in terms of their next manager? Again, subscribe to our content, our brand new YouTube channel. If you want exclusive year-round Padres content, hit that subscribe button, like our videos, Follow us on Twitter at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. Tingler is out. Who's in? That's next on the Wrap Up Show with John Schaefer and Jim Russell.